I had always been so curious about the world around me, even when I didn't know exactly the reason why it sparked such an intricately specific connection. And as cliche as that opening statement sounds, I can begin by denoting that my first viable memory of living curiously started within the classroom. I started to attend school at a local campus 10 minutes away from my childhood home, in which I would learn how to speak, write, and read. I remember that the classroom I always went to was so vibrantly exquisite, as every wall was posted with a plethora of eloquent drawings addressed by students in Crayola paints. The classroom was also engulfed with the whiff of a combined aroma of Play Doh and Purell hand sanitizer that to me equated to the delicacy of a luxurious eau de parfum. There was only 4 or 5 of us students, including myself, who attended the classroom to participate in the teacher-led exercises where we would repetitively practice our pronunciations and crisply articulate our vowels and consonants. Despite my naive ambiguity as to precisely why I was attending this particular class when no other students were involved on campus, I was really happy to be there and felt that it was almost a safe haven for me. I don't know why it felt comforting to keep coming back to these classes, but as ridiculous and superb as it sounds, it felt like a luxury to me. I had thought that only special students, and as in special, I mean extraordinary, were only offered the privilege to indulge in such an exquisite repertoire of curriculum. To me, being a special student felt like the dream that everyone dreamt of being. But when I would come home and express my overly tenacious enthusiasm as to how my day at school went, I soon began to recognize that these classrooms were not designed because they necessarily wanted me there, but rather because they needed me there. At the age of 3, I was diagnosed with receptive and expressive language disorder, which made it difficult for me to effectively express my emotions and perspectives in a way that made conventional sense to others, but also created a deficit for me to understand what others were trying to convey to me thoroughly. Because of the medical diagnosis that foresaw that my neural networks were wired differently than that of someone neurotypical, I was prefaced as someone incapable of fulfilling the means to pursue the educational gateway, as doctors reassured my parents that I would be lucky enough to attain my high school diploma at best. Because of my experiences as an education sciences major and critical gender studies minor, I've been able to put comprehensible words and thoughts as to why I continue to lead with curiosity, why ever since a young age I continue to persevere with the resilience rather than the limitation of my disability. When I first started at UCSD, I would have never imagined myself wanting to pursue the field of action and critical based research. I used to be a theater and a math major for crying out loud. Every time I talk to people about what exactly it is that I do and want to do, I always refer to Kathy J. Cohen's Punks, Bulldaggers, and Welfare Queens, which to me has an answer to every ambiguity and concern I have regarding my identity. The reason why I find this piece to be so compelling is not because it exemplifies what queerness is alone. It's rather because how queerness can be analytically understood, deciphered, and evaluated as a multidimensional discipline that concerns not just the inequities revolving around gender and sex, but also every other asset of identity. Furthermore, queerness serves as a context that brings forth a sense of belonging to those who communally experience a sense of isolation, alienation, and exile on the mere basis of being perceived as minoritized. So, why should all of this matter? Why should my story matter? What can people gain from this perspective that can then be applied to their own circumstances? The reason why my story matters to me is actually not because it is my own story. When we look at minorities as marginalized individuals, it's not themselves nor their identities that have minoritized themselves, but rather the system that makes it feel almost impossible to not be minoritized. When I look at the topics that bring me the most passion and the highest sense of curiosity, I always ask myself, who is directly being served and catered to through this course of dialogue? The answer to that never comes back to me. Never. For me, disability does not constitute the inability or incapability to perform a certain function that was specifically engineered for the neurotypical. Rather, disability is the active duty of detaching, deconstructing, and decolonizing ourselves from the notions and stereotypes that label us as people who do not belong in this world. Following Sammy Skalk's philosophy of disidentification, I do not identify as disabled, but rather with my disability. My disability cannot nor will not be constrained to the specific notion that I struggle to perform A, B, and C tasks, but rather that my disability gives me the unique quality to perform X, Y, and Z talents. If I had to leave the class of 2024 with one piece of advice out of everything that I just shared, I would want to leave everyone with this in particular. When someone tells you that you cannot and that you should not do something because you are incapable of doing so, do that thing anyways. But make sure that you do it louder, do it stronger, and do it bolder. Not because you want to prove to that person that they're wrong, but because you know deep down, no matter what others think, that you are capable of defining your own future based on the things that fuel your own fire, your own light, and your own passion.